everybody. This is a brief lecture on your theory and rationale paper. So I want to show you where I am. I am in assignments due in this unit, and I'm at the theory rationale paper. This may or may not be your class. You can ignore that due date if it's not what you think it should be. So when you open this, there are 3 documents there. We're going to take some time to look at each one. So this is called a good theory rationale paper will, and it's going to tell you what should happen in your paper. So first, let's look at these headings. You should start your paper by typing these headings into your paper. It will help you not miss anything. So you're going to first summarize the issue in 2 to 5 paragraphs. And this is the issue and your population. And we'll look at an example at the end of the video. So you're going to take everything you've done so far and summarize it in 2 to 5 paragraphs. Then you're going, so this first part you've already done, you've gotten feedback on it, you're going to make it better and submit it in this paper. Then it says to introduce at least one model and clearly explains how it relates to the issue or population. If you've completed your online assignments, that's been complete also with feedback. So you should be able to take at least one of the models you want to use and put it in your paper and do relatively well. This, a brief explanation of your program, 1 to 3 paragraphs. You're not going to know everything about your program because you're still in the beginning stages of what your program will look like, but you need to explain in your head what it looks like now. And when I read this explanation of your program, it should look like what I see in the next section, which is the goals and objectives chart. And then the final part is the summary. So here are your headings: the introduction, summarize the issue and the paper in 2 to 5 paragraphs, then introduce at least one model in this section and explain how it relates to the issue, then a program description with a brief 1 to 3 paragraph explanation, and then goals and objectives, identify which you're going to put your charts in, which you've already done also if you've done your online assignments, and then your summary or summarize the issue and the paper, which you'll go back to the introduction and rework it more succinctly. So that's the paper. Next, I'd like to talk about the scoring rubric. So here's the scoring rubric. It tells you what standards we're working on. And then it tells you exactly what I'm grading it. So the very first thing it says is, do you have a 2 to 5 paragraph introduction that defines the problem and the population? So did you do both the problem and the population? If you did, and you did it thorough, accurately, and succinctly, you have a 3, and so on. Then the next section of your paper is that theory, and it says here, clearly understands the theory or theories and clearly can relate it to the program or community. I want to emphasize here that this section is talking about how this model supports your program. I do not want you to tell me what the model means. For example, I would not want you to say pre-seed model will be used to support this program. Predisposing means, reinforcing means, enabling means. It was created by Larry Green. I don't know. I don't want you to write that. I want you to tell me how it relates to your program. Because if you think about the levels of cognition that we talked about last night when we talked about objectives, if you can apply it to your program, I know you know the program. I know you understand it. So that's there. You will have feedback from that from an assignment. Then you're going to have your charts. And I look at your charts a couple different ways. The first way I look at it is, does your theory, your goals, and your objectives, are they all designed to meet the overarching goals of the grant? Then I look at your chart and I ask myself, do the theory, goals, and objectives all align with each other? And that's scored. Then I look at the chart and I did look at to see, are your objectives measurable? Are they SMART? I'm looking for SMART objectives. And it tells you, is it 100%? Is it not 100, but at least 90, and so on. And then this part that we always do, spelling and grammar, APA format, and style. Spelling and grammar, you should be making very few errors. At this point in the semester, I'm expecting almost no errors in your APA. At this point, I stop writing what the errors are and I highlight some of them, but I don't even take the time to highlight all of them, because if I'm taking the time to do that, and I do it to great extent and give you a lot of feedback, if you're not paying attention to the feedback at this point in the semester, there's no reason for me to keep doing it. So you will see less feedback in these areas because I've been providing you with feedback. And so that's the scoring rubric. That's what I'm going to look at. And now the last thing we're going to look at together is a sample. So this, I told you, is a C or C plus paper, and the reason why it's a C or C plus paper is because it's not specific enough. But the point of this is to show you what the layout of the paper looks like and what I am expecting to see from you. So here's the beginning. It is an overview of the problem. What is not here, the risk factors are not here, and there's not a clear description of the population. And at this point, the population would be in a specific community. Then we have the theory section, and you notice this does not have the headings, and APA requires headings. So here is the theory section. And this section actually is pretty good. It tells you what model's being used and why it's being used. Then it takes the key components of that model and relates it specifically to the program. So it doesn't tell you what predisposing factors are. It tells you what they are in relationship to this problem in this population and in this program. That's what I'm expecting to see from you. I put it in a chart because it was easier for me to do. If you want to write it in narrative, that's fine. It's up to you, whatever works for you. Again, you have received feedback on this on your assignments, and I'm expecting to see you put that feedback into work here. Then it tells you the next section is the program description. And it tells a little bit about the program, but again, this is way too general. It needs to be much more specific than this. And then the next section are these charts. So you have one chart for each goal. You'll list the grant goal, and then you list the community goal. And the community goal is exactly like the grant goal, except you add your specific community. Okay? And if what you're doing is broad, you might have to add a disease here. This grant was on breast cancer, so that was already given. So the community goal looks exactly like the grant goal, but it's more specific to your community. In this chart, you are required to have the objectives column. The evaluation column you are doing only for feedback, and I will come back to this after we look at the objectives. One thing people ask is, how many objectives do I need? And the answer is, I don't know. It all depends. So each of your programs are different. You're planning to do different things. And so even if you're in the same grant, you could end up with a different number of objectives. But here we go. It says, I'm looking for SMART. By the end of the first year, Minority women in the program will show a 25% improvement in attitude toward mammography. You would then write second year, what's the percentage, and third year, what's the percentage. You don't need to write the whole thing over, you just need to give the key components. We talked about in class the reason why you do this is you want to show progress over the time of the grant. So for example, if you only had this first objective, it would say that you're going to work on attitudes in the first year. You're expecting them to increase by 25%, and then you're never doing it again. And that's probably not accurate. So if you're doing something over a period of time, the objective should show progress. And again, there's no right or wrong number of objectives. What I'm looking at, do the goals and objectives meet the goal of the grant? So if the goal of the grant is to decrease breast cancer in this group, in this specific community, if I do all of these objectives, will I hit that goal? And again, that's different for each of you. I can't give you a specific answer. So let's look at this very quickly. This is optional. It's a good idea to put at least a couple of them in because you'll get feedback on them. And on your next paper, this must be there. So it would be good if you had a couple options. So the way to determine what the evaluation is to look at what your verbs are. So this says show a 25% improvement. That means my evaluation must show a 25% improvement. And I'm doing that with a Likert scale, and we talked about that in class. Those are the kind of scales that say, what do you think? How do you feel? And you have options that are scored. For example, 4 would be, I totally agree with this. 3, I agree. 2, I disagree. Or 1, I don't think this is important at all, or I just totally disagree. So that's an example. Okay, here it says there's going to be a 60% increase in women performing routine breast self-exams. So I need to measure performing. That's the verb. So if you think back to our theories, there's some behaviors you cannot measure. And so I can't measure if they're actually doing it, but I can ask them what their intention is over the next 30 days. This one is written slightly differently. It says by the end of the program, which is 3 years, baseline mammography will increase in communities served by 50%. So here it says baseline mammography will increase. I need to measure if baseline mammography increases. So I can collect data from local facilities. I can survey intention to get a baseline mammography. Since this is the end objective, I would need first and second year objectives. And that goes on. This one says they'll be able to identify 10 myths. The objective is a test with true-false statements. This one says they will be trained or they will attend training. I'm going to count the number who come to training. This says they'll be able to identify something. I'm asking them to identify something. This one says they will be able to demonstrate proper BSE. And this says the way I'm going to measure that is they'll be given breast models and they'll perform BSE on the breast models and they'll be observed. So whatever the verb is in your objective, that's what you're measuring over here. Again, this is 100% optional, but if you put some stuff in there, you'll get feedback for your 4th paper. I will add some information with this excuse me, I got stumbled a little bit, but I'll add another short video on the whole concept of how to do APA and the 2 main items that you're using. Please reach out if you have questions.